Hey yogis and yoginis, Ashley Josephine here. Today I'm going to give you some stretches to work out the quads, and we're going to specifically look at King Arthur, which is the King Arthur, the craziest of crazy quad stretches. But don't worry, we'll get you there. We're going to start with your normal quad stretch that you've seen in gym class since you were little. If you can balance on your left foot, grab hold of the outside edge of your right foot. If you need a wall, you can have a wall nearby. Try and pull your heel in towards your glute. You can grab with both hands if you'd like. And then the more you can pull your heel in towards your glute, the more you're going to start to feel this as a stretch in your quad. Try and take a couple deep breaths in and out here. If you're a runner or an athlete, you do a lot of high impact sports, your quads typically are probably pretty tight. And some of us just have tighter muscle groups than others, so I know that I often have tight quads, even though all I do mostly is yoga. On those days that we do lots of lunges, our quads are going to be a little tighter than on the days when we're actually working our quads. Go ahead and switch sides if you haven't already. But what tends to happen is in yoga classes, we do a lot of hamstring stretching and not as much quad stretching, because it's actually a little bit more difficult to stretch the quads in yoga other than just doing a tree pose variation, which is essentially what this posture is right here. So again, try and pull the heel in as tight to your glute as you can. The other reason that stretching the quads is sometimes problematic is because it is this muscle between the hips and the knees are oftentimes problematic, and that we often have or see knee issues as yoga teachers and our students. And if you have knee issues, it's going to be harder to stretch the quad. Same thing with the hips. If you're having something going on with the hips, it's going to be harder to get into that quad as well. So it's a huge muscle group that can be hard to stretch and feel like we're really doing something there. So I want you to just do a simple lunge. Bring the right foot forward. You can have the left knee down. And let your hips sink forward towards the front of the mat, or whatever your orientation of forward is. So you can start to stretch into the psoas. You're going to feel this hopefully in the front side of the hip flexor area of the back leg. The more you take the weight forward, the more you're going to sink into that stretch in the psoas. If you need blocks or something underneath your hands, you can absolutely put something underneath your hands to help you prop yourself up. And take a couple breaths here. This will help prep us for getting into King Arthur. I believe in one of my videos in the past, I have done King Arthur before, so this might not be new to you. But I wanted this particular video to be specifically about getting into the quads. So you can do these quick quad stretches if that's the area of focus that you have for your stretch, your workout, whatever you need today. Let's go ahead and switch sides. So bring the opposite foot forward. The back knee can be down. If you need something underneath the knee, a blanket always works nice to pad up the knee if you're on a hard surface. Although I do recommend that you definitely have a blanket or a mat handy, maybe even rolled up a couple times, so that you have some type of padding underneath your knee for when we get into King Arthur here in a couple minutes. So in this lunge, again, let your hips sink forward and down. Surrender as much as you can into this stretch, easing your way into it, using your breath, so you're not forcing yourself there, but you are getting a nice stretch in the psoas, hip flexor. You feel something stretching in the front side of the hip on the back leg. So take a big breath in and a big breath out. Then bring yourself up, and you're also going to need a wall for King Arthur. So situate yourself so that you're near a wall and you have something to pad up underneath your knees. We're going to go into a lunge here, but the back leg is going to be up against the wall. So let's start with the right foot forward and the left foot back. So go ahead and bring your right foot out in front of you at a 90 degree between the knee and the ankle. So the ankle's right underneath the knee joint and the ankle joint are stacked. You can bring your hands down to the ground, and you might need to do a little adjustment here as you scoot yourself back so that your shin comes straight up against the wall and your knee comes as close to the wall as you can. This is where you might want to pad up underneath the knee. Your foot, the top of your foot is going to be up against the wall and on the inside of your left hip. And then if you can, begin to bring your hands to your thighs and stand up again, keeping that ankle right underneath the knee and the right foot. Now for some of you, being down here might be intense enough on the quads, and if that's true for you, then certainly stay here. You might be able to put blocks or some type of prop up underneath your hands so that you can start to come up, but coming up to your thigh is too much. So if you need something underneath the hands, place something underneath the hands. You might be able to come up onto your thigh, and now I'm really starting to feel this in my quad in the left leg. And then ultimately, you want to see if you can reach your arms up overhead and lean back so that your back comes up against the wall. Now for me, that's not going to happen today just because of how tight my quads are. The most important thing for you to do is breathe here. And the more you can breathe, the more you can exhale, the longer you can stay, the more you're really going to get into your quad today. So take one more big breath in, and then we're going to switch over to the other side. But if you have really tight quads and this feels like the most glorious stretch ever, then I encourage you to stay here for a couple minutes if you can, maybe even 3, 4, 5 minutes per side. So take your time and really let yourself marinate in this stretch. I'm going to come on down and switch to the other side. Coming out of the lunge, switching sides. Now the left foot is going to come forward. I'm going to scoop myself back. So the right knee comes up against the wall. The shin is right up against the wall. Then I'm going to place my left foot right underneath my left knee. The right foot rather is on the outside edge of my right hip. You might stay with your hands down on the ground, and this is enough for you. Maybe bring your hands up to blocks or some type of prop. Perhaps you can rest your hands on your thigh. This side for me happens to be a lot tighter, so you might notice that one side is a lot different than you for the other side. There's no rush, there's no goal here, even though I say reaching your arms up overhead and leaning back with your back up against the wall is maybe how you might see it done in a book or pictures. Your body is going to be very different than the person's body in that picture. So I want you to stay where you need to be, so we're not tearing any muscles, because that's not the goal of yoga. The goal of yoga, if there were to be a goal, the intention of yoga is a better word, is to really just be with our body, build a relationship with our body, and continue to get stronger and more flexible and find that balance in our body. So if this works for you, then great. If this works for you, awesome. If this works for you, that doesn't mean that you're any worse at this than anyone else. It just means that's where you are today. Remember to breathe. That's the most important part of yoga. And I try to talk so that I can distract you from all the sensations that you might be experiencing in your back quad. Again, if you find this to be really useful and helpful, stay here for 4 or 5 minutes. If this is excruciating, start with just a couple breaths and work your way up to that. Each day, adding a couple more breaths until you get to a minute, then add 30 seconds, then add a minute. See if you can get up to that 5-minute mark. For now, I'm going to come on out of this and bring myself to a seat on the mat. So practice as King Arthur. It feels really nice in the quads. It opens up the front of the thighs. It's going to give you a lot more mobility and flexibility, and I think you'll notice in your other athletic pursuits and in your yoga practice that it's going to start making things a little bit easier for you if we can keep these quads nice and loose and not so tight. Again, my name is Ashley Josephine. If you ever have any questions, feedback, or if you have any requests for things for me to go over or teach, please let me know. Send me an email. I'm happy to chat with you about your yoga practice. And I hope to see you on or off the mat again soon. Namaste.